Alex was running down the sidewalk like her life depended on those next few minutes. And in a way, it really did. She was late for an interview that could change everything. After missing the bus and having no money for an Uber, her only option was to run 9 blocks on foot. She was so focused on making it on time that she didn't notice the man walking toward her, eyes glued to his phone. And then bam, they collided. The impact knocked her to the ground like a sack of potatoes. Her purse flew open, contents scattered like confetti, and the heel of her sandals snapped with a sharp crack. "Don't you watch where you're going?" Alex shouted, furious, still sitting on the sidewalk, trying to gather her papers. The man standing in front of her was tall, dressed in a flawless dark suit, holding his phone with clear impatience. He didn't even think about helping her. "You're the one who came running like a maniac," he said coldly. Alex looked up at him, stunned. His face was stone cold. No sympathy, no emotion. Typical rich guy in a fancy suit. Breathing hard, she stood up, holding her broken shoe. "You broke my heel," she said, nearly in tears. "Great. Now what? How am I supposed to show up like this to the interview?" "This was my chance, you arrogant snub." He raised an eyebrow, completely unfazed. "If you're really good, a broken heel won't stop you." Alex's eyes widened. "Wow, inspiring. Have you ever thought about selling cheap, motivational quotes on mugs?" He gave half a smile, or maybe just a facial twitch, and turned his back. "Good luck with your life," he muttered, disappearing down the sidewalk like the lead in some silent movie. Alex huffed, looking down at the twisted shoe in her hand. She took a deep breath, lifted her chin, and made a decision. "That's it. I'm going barefoot." She took off the other sandal, grabbed both in her hands, and kept running. A few minutes later, she walked into the impressive lobby of V&L, breathing heavily, barefoot, shoes in hand, and her dignity hanging by a thread. The receptionist, looking polished in a blazer that probably cost 3 times Alex's rent, stared at her like she'd just seen a UFO. "Interview for executive assistant," Alex said, trying to sound confident, even though she was clearly barefoot with bangs stuck to her forehead. "Name?" the woman asked, not hiding the doubt in her voice. "Alex Harper." The receptionist typed something on her tablet and pointed to a hallway. Alex walked to the waiting room, and when she opened the door, her heart sank. 25 candidates, all perfect, expensive heels, flawless hair, makeup untouched. They looked like they'd stepped out of a French perfume commercial. Alex, on the other hand, looked like she just survived a citywide marathon. She quietly sat in an empty chair, trying to hide her shoes behind her bag. Some of the women looked at her curiously. Others giggled softly. One even snapped a photo, pretending to check her phone. "Is she seriously barefoot?" A blonde woman whispered nearby. Alex pretended not to hear. She did the best she could, crossed her legs, lifted her chin, and tried to breathe. "You're here. That's what matters. What you say matters." Then she heard it. Footsteps. Confident, steady, in charge. She looked up, and there he was, the man. Same dark suit, perfectly styled hair, the kind of expression that says he runs the world and has zero patience for people. Alex's eyes widened. Her heart nearly leapt out of her chest, and without thinking, she blurted out, "Oh no, not you again, mister. Arrogant fancy suite." A few women stifled laughter. Others looked shocked. The hallway turned into a minefield of stairs. The man, Mr. Arrogant Fancy Suit, stopped, turned his head toward her, and stared. No smile, no surprise, just look. Then he kept walking. Alex wanted to explode or dig a tunnel and disappear. Anything but face what just happened. Minutes later, the receptionist came back. "Alex Harper?" She swallowed hard, stood up with as much dignity as she could manage, and walked down the hallway like a warrior after battle, barefoot. She entered the interview room and froze. There he was, sitting at the head of the table. The man, the walking disaster, now revealed as the CEO of the company, Ethan Hayes. And the position, it was to be his personal assistant. He looked up from his papers and met her gaze. Alex gave a nervous, half-hearted smile and muttered to herself, "Well, that's it. I'm going to get fired before I even get hired." Alex stared at Ethan for a few seconds. That felt like forever. The silence in the meeting room was deafening. She swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the moment. Rent was 2 months late. Bills were piling up on the kitchen table like a leaning tower, ready to collapse. And her fridge had more empty space than a modern art museum. She needed that job, Desperately, Ethan flipped through her resume with the same expression someone might have when reviewing a stranger's tax return. Alex Harper, he murmured without looking up. 27 years old, business degree from Washington State University, experience in, he paused, a coffee shop, clothing store, and pet store. Alex bit her lip. Laid out like that, her resume sounded like a comedy of errors. Yeah, not exactly the most straightforward path, she admitted, trying to keep things light. Ethan finally looked up and stared at her directly. Why do you want to work here? Alex took a deep breath. She was still shocked to be face to face with the man who had broken her heel, but something inside told her, just be yourself. You've got nothing to lose. Honestly, she began, shifting in her seat, because I need to pay my bills before the power gets cut, and I end up eating dinner by candlelight. And also because I'm good at what I do, even if my resume looks like life bingo. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Life bingo? Yeah, like those games where you mark random numbers and hope they somehow make a pattern. The coffee shop taught me how to deal with grumpy people before 9 a.m. At the clothing store, I learned patience. Especially when someone insists on trying a size small, when they're clearly a large. And at the pet store, well, I discovered I have a knack for calming nervous creatures. Ethan tilted his head. Interested, nervous creatures? Alex smiled for the first time since entering the room. Anxious dogs, stressed out cats, CEOs who break other people's heels on the sidewalk. For a split second, Ethan almost smiled. Almost. You do realize this position requires discretion, organization, and professionalism, right? I do, Alex replied. Serious. And I can bring all that just with a bit of humanity, because let's face it, everyone needs a little fun in their day, especially in a corporate environment where people look like they've swallowed coat hangers. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his fingers drumming softly on the table. Tell me about your weaknesses. Alex let out a laugh. Seriously? Look at where we are. I'm barefoot. I just called my potential future boss stiff in the waiting room. And my biggest professional win so far has been getting a French bulldog to take a bath. I think my weaknesses are pretty obvious. And your strengths? I don't give up easily, she said, looking him straight in the eye. I'm here, aren't I? I could have given up when I broke my heel. I could have walked out when I realized you were the CEO. But I'm still here because I believe I deserve a chance, and because, honestly, I'm really good at turning chaos into order. It's a natural talent. Ethan watched her for a long moment, as if trying to crack a code. Why should I hire someone with no corporate experience? Because experience can be gained, attitude can't, and I've got plenty of that. Alex answered without hesitation. Besides, I bet everyone else here is the same. Expensive degrees, perfect resumes, rehearsed answers. I'm different, and sometimes different is exactly what you need. Ethan closed her resume and gave her a look so intense it made her shift in her seat. Interesting, he murmured almost to himself. Very interesting. He stood up, signaling the interview was over. You'll hear from us by tomorrow. Alex stood as well, holding her broken shoes, and walked out. The next day, Alex was reheating her coffee for the third time when her phone rang. Alex Harper, said a professional-sounding woman. This is Lisa from V&L Corporation. We have an offer for you. Alex's heart skipped a beat. An offer? You've been selected for the position. Can you start Monday at 8 a.m.? Alex nearly dropped her mug. Really? I got it. You did. Congratulations and welcome to the team. Alex hung up the phone and let out a scream that made her neighbor bang on the wall. Monday arrived like a hurricane of nerves. Alex put on her best blazer, which still looked like it came from a clearance rack, and a new pair of shoes bought with her last $20. She showed up at V&L 15 minutes early, determined to make a different first impression than she had at the interview. What a joke! Within 5 minutes, Alex was already lost in the maze of hallways, had walked into the wrong room 3 times, and even asked a mirror for directions, thinking it was a person. Excuse me, are you the new assistant? Asked a well-dressed woman in her 50 seconds. Yes, that's me, Alex, she replied, relieved to finally find a real human being. I'm Nora from HR. Let me show you to your desk. Nora led her through more hallways to a neat workstation just outside a large door with a golden nameplate. Ethan Hayes, CEO. This is your workspace, Nora explained. Mr. Hayes values punctuality and efficiency. Alex sat in the swivel chair, which creaked in protest. All right, and what exactly do I need to do for now? Just organize these documents, and answer the phone. Nora walked away, leaving Alex alone with a stack of papers that looked like it had a life of its own. 2 hours later, Alex had already spilled a cup of coffee. Thankfully, it was empty. Answered the phone with V and L. "This is Alex," instead of the proper greeting. Reorganized the files alphabetically when they were supposed to be by date. Come up with a clever fix for the broken air conditioner using a fan and some creative positioning. Her co-workers had started to notice. Some chuckled quietly at her mishaps. Others were impressed with her creative problem-solving. "Who's the new girl?" someone whispered. "The one who showed up barefoot to her interview." Another replied. Nicknames stuck like gum to a shoe. At lunch, Alex discovered that being the barefoot girl from the interview was actually more of a perk than she expected. People came up to her, curious to meet the girl who walked in barefoot for a job interview and still got hired. "Is it true you called Mr. Hayes arrogant?" asked Ryan from marketing. "Technically, I said, arrogant fancy suit," Alex corrected, sparking a wave of laughter. Ethan watched everything from his office window. He didn't say anything, but his eyes followed Alex as she moved through the halls. There was something about her that intrigued him, a kind of authenticity he hadn't seen in years around the corporate world. At the end of the day, Alex was tidying up her desk when she noticed a folded piece of paper that hadn't been there before. Curious, she opened it. "You don't belong here." A chill ran through her. She looked around, but the office was nearly empty. Who had written it and why? Alex folded the note and tucked it into her bag, a nervous feeling settling in her stomach. Maybe someone was right. Maybe she really didn't belong here. But one thing she knew for sure. She wasn't going to leave without a fight. A week had passed since Alex officially became the barefoot girl from the interview. The nickname had stuck like a tattoo, and she was getting used to the curious stares and whispers in the halls of V&L Corporation. She was working on Ethan's schedule when a sharp voice cut through the air like nails on a chalkboard. "So, you're the famous newcomer causing such a stir." Alex looked up and saw an elegant woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her blazer probably cost more than Alex's monthly salary. "I'm Victoria Lane, senior manager of the finance department," the woman said, looking at Alex like she was inspecting a flawed product. "I've worked here for 8 years. Nice to meet you, Victoria." "I'm Alex," she replied, trying to keep a polite tone. Victoria let out a soft laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "Oh, I know exactly who you are. The girl who showed up barefoot for her interview. How brave." Her tone was as sweet as poisoned sugar. Alex smiled. "Thank you. I like to think it was innovative. You know, breaking corporate paradigms." "Paradigms," Victoria repeated, tasting the word like it was sour. "Interesting. And tell me, how does someone with your background end up in a position so close to the CEO?" The question came loaded with undertones. Alex tilted her head, playing innocent, maybe because he needs someone who knows the difference between competence and arrogance disguised as professionalism. Victoria's smile faltered just for a second. "Excuse me?" "Oh, nothing," Alex said, turning back to her papers. "Just noticing how experience can sometimes make people, well, stuck in their own certainties." Victoria crossed her arms. "You're bold. I'll give you that. But boldness without substance is just stubbornness. This isn't a place for someone who doesn't know the rules of the game." Alex stopped typing and looked her straight in the eyes. "And what are those rules exactly? Being fake, smiling while stabbing people in the back, or is it just about wearing expensive shoes so you can step on others?" "Careful what you say, dear," Victoria snapped back, the venom now clear in her voice. "Some people around here have enough influence to make your time here very uncomfortable." Alex stood up from her chair, smiling sweetly. "Good to know. That way I can be better prepared to deal with insecure people who feel threatened by a barefoot newbie." At that moment, Ethan walked out of his office. He stopped when he saw the two women staring at each other like gladiators before a fight. "Is everything okay?" he asked, looking from one to the other. Victoria quickly changed her posture, taking on a professional air. "Nothing serious, Ethan. Just getting to know our new colleague." Victoria was explaining the company's unwritten rules to me, Alex added innocently. "Very enlightening." Ethan looked at them for a moment, but said nothing. He simply placed a few documents on Alex's desk. "I need these reports reviewed by the end of the day," he said before heading back to his office. Victoria waited for the door to close, then turned back to Alex. "This conversation isn't over," she muttered before walking away with firm steps. Alex sighed and sat back down. "Great. Looks like I've made a new friend." Later, Alex was heading out for lunch when she found Ethan waiting for the elevator. He wore a navy blue tie that made his eyes stand out, and Alex noticed she was paying more attention than she probably should. "Trouble with Victoria?" Ethan asked once they stepped into the elevator. Alex pressed the ground floor button. Nothing a basic human relations course wouldn't fix for her. I mean, Ethan almost smiled. She can be intense. That's a polite way to say she has the charm of an angry cactus. This time, Ethan actually smiled, just before a strange noise interrupted them. The elevator jolted and stopped between the 10th and 9th floors. Alex looked at the panel. Is that normal? Ethan pressed the emergency button, but nothing happened. Apparently not. Alex took in the situation and let out a nervous laugh. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Just what my week needed. Ethan pulled out his phone, but there was no signal. We'll have to wait for someone to realize we're stuck. Alex leaned against the wall, trying not to think about the confined space. Well, at least now I've got a good excuse for being late to lunch, she said, trying to keep her tone light. Though, come to think of it, if we die in here, at least I don't have to pay my bills this month. Ethan looked at her, surprised. You're making jokes about dying in an elevator. It's my defense mechanism, Alex explained with a shrug. When life turns into a comedy of errors, the only way out is to laugh. Otherwise, you go crazy. And does it work? I'm still sane, so I guess it does. Ethan leaned against the opposite wall, studying her face. You're not like anyone I've ever worked with. Is that a compliment or a complaint in disguise? Still deciding, he admitted. Alex laughed. Honest. I like that. Most people would spend 5 minutes telling me how great I am before getting to the point. And what's your point? That I don't have much of a social filter. I tend to talk too much when I'm nervous, and I have a worrying habit of turning serious situations into comedy skits. Ethan tilted his head. And does that bother you? It used to, until I realized life's too short to pretend to be someone else. Plus, being real has this funny way of revealing who's genuine and who's fake. Like Victoria. Alex made a face. Victoria's the type who smiles at your face and then tells everyone you have bad breath. This time, Ethan laughed for real, a genuine sound that completely changed his expression. You have a very particular way of looking at things. That's what happens when you grow up without money for therapy. You develop broom philosophy. Broom philosophy? Wisdom picked up from talking to strangers in cheap places. Surprisingly deep sometimes. The elevator jolted again and started moving. The doors opened on the ground floor, but neither of them moved right away. Well, Alex said, breaking the moment. That was educational. I agree, Ethan replied. Though his tone had shifted somehow, they stepped out of the elevator, and Alex headed toward the exit. Alex, Ethan called after her. She turned around. About Victoria. If she gives you trouble, let me know. Alex smiled. Thanks, but I can handle her. I've got experience with temperamental creatures, remember? Pet shop. Ethan watched her walk away, a smile lingering on his lips. Back at the office, Ethan found himself once again staring out the window toward Alex's desk. There was something about her that deeply intrigued him. The way she turned disasters into humor, how she stayed true to herself in a place where fakery was often rewarded. Alex, on the other hand, couldn't stop thinking about their conversation in the elevator. For the first time, Ethan had seemed human, real, and that scared her more than any snide remark from Victoria, because liking your boss was a complication she definitely didn't need in an already chaotic life. 3 days after the elevator incident, Alex was sorting through Ethan's mail when Lisa from HR walked up to her desk with a look that blended urgency and slight concern. Alex, I need a word, she said, lowering her voice. Ethan asked you to present the Harrison Project data in this afternoon's board meeting. Alex felt the blood drain from her face. The Harrison Project? She repeated, trying to sound casual while internally entering full-blown panic mode. Sure, no problem. Lisa gave her a skeptical look. You know what it's about, right? Of course. Alex lied without hesitation. It's the Harrison with data for presenting. Lisa sighed. It's the quarterly sales numbers for the Western Division. The meeting's in 2 hours. Alex, are you sure you're ready? Ready is my middle name, Alex replied, already starting to sweat. Lisa walked away, leaving Alex alone with her rising anxiety. She stared at the mountain of papers on her desk and began frantically digging for anything that mentioned the Harrison Project. Harrison Project? Harrison Project? She mumbled, shuffling papers like someone looking for car keys in a bottomless purse. Finally, she found a folder labeled Harrison Q3. She opened it and was greeted with charts, spreadsheets, and numbers that may as well have been written in ancient hieroglyphics. Perfect, she sighed. 2 hours to become an expert in quarterly sales. I faced easier challenges, like decoding a tax form or understanding why people like cauliflower. 2 hours later, Alex was seated in the impressive V&L boardroom, surrounded by executives wearing suits that cost more than her car. Ethan sat at the head of the table, Victoria to his right with a smile that promised trouble, and other directors who watched Alex with thinly veiled curiosity. Alex will be presenting the Harrison Project numbers, Ethan announced. Alex stood up, holding the documents with slightly shaky hands. She took a deep breath and decided to stick to her life philosophy. When you don't know what to do, be honest and hope for the best. All right, folks, she began, looking at the expectant faces. I'm going to be honest with you. 2 hours ago, I had no idea what the Harrison Project was. I thought maybe it was a Harrison Ford movie. A few nervous laughs echoed around the room. Victoria rolled her eyes, but Alex went on, gaining confidence. After diving into this data, I discovered something fascinating. Our Western Division sales numbers are a lot like my relationship with working out. Started strong, dipped dramatically in the middle, and are now slowly getting back on track. This time, the laughter was more genuine. Alex pointed to the first chart. Take a look. In Q1, we were selling like fanatics. These were the last products on Earth. Great numbers. Then in Q2, it's like our customers realized money doesn't grow on trees. 30% drop. She flipped to the next chart. But here's the interesting part. In Q3, we're climbing back. Not a miracle, but consistent growth. It's like a diet. You're not looking for instant change, just steady progress. Owen, the sales director, a man in his 50s, leaned forward. And what's your analysis on what caused that recovery? Alex glanced at the data and improvised, based on what little she understood. Well, Owen, it looks like our regional marketing finally found the right audience. It's like telling a joke. Timing is everything. Our products reached the Western market at the right time with the right people and the right price. She pointed to a table. Also, our competitors were dealing with supply issues, which gave us a temporary advantage. It was like having the soccer field to ourselves, while the other team was still in the locker room, arguing over strategy. Ethan watched her with an unreadable expression, but there was something in his eyes. Something that looked impressed. Alex continued, now fully in her rhythm. For next quarter, I suggest we keep the current strategy, but make some adjustments. It's like cooking. When the recipe works, you don't change it. You just add a little more seasoning. When she finished, the room fell silent for a moment. Then Owen began to clap, followed by the other board members. Excellent analysis, Owen said, creative and straight to the point. I agree, added another director. I like the unconventional approach. Alex smiled, feeling a mix of relief and pride. She had managed to turn her lack of experience into a presentation that apparently impressed everyone. Everyone except Victoria. After the meeting, Alex returned to her desk, still processing what had just happened. She couldn't believe she had not only survived, but actually impressed the board. She was organizing some papers when she heard low voices coming from the break room. Obviously, she only did well because Ethan has a special interest in her. Came Victoria's unmistakable voice. Do you really think so? Asked another female voice. Oh, please, Claire. A secretary, with no experience giving a presentation to the board, that's not normal protocol. That's clear favoritism. Alex felt her stomach tighten. But she did well, Claire replied a bit hesitantly. Anyone would do well with the CEO's protection. Victoria shot back. Mark my words. She won't last long here. It's only a matter of time before this little act is exposed. Alex backed away from the break room, feeling like she'd just been punched in the gut. In a matter of hours, her success had turned into fuel for office gossip. For the rest of the afternoon, she noticed the looks and whispers in the halls. The rumor had spread like wildfire. At 5:30, when most employees had already left, Ethan appeared at her desk. Alex, I need to talk to you, he said, his voice serious. In my office, just the two of us. Alex's heart dropped. This was it. The rumors had reached Ethan, and now she was about to be fired. She followed him to his office, feeling like she was walking to her own sentencing. Ethan closed the door and motioned for her to sit. He took his seat behind the desk, fingers laced, his expression solemn. I heard some comments about your presentation today, he began. Alex swallowed hard. Mr. Hayes, I can explain. No need, Ethan interrupted. Your presentation was excellent, creative, engaging, and effective. Alex blinked, confused. Zo, I'm not being fired. Ethan tilted his head slightly. Why would you think that? Well, the rumors. People are saying I only did well because of favoritism. Ethan leaned back in his chair, studying her face. And what do you think about that? I think it's unfair, Alex answered, finding her courage. Maybe it wasn't the most technical presentation in the world, but it was honest and it worked. Ethan was quiet for a moment, then leaned forward. Alex, can I ask you something personal? She nodded. Who are you really? The question caught her off guard. What do you mean? You showed up here barefoot, turned your lack of experience into charm, won over a room full of skeptical executives, and now you're handling office gossip with the same grace. Who are you really? Alex took a deep breath. I'm someone who grew up learning that life doesn't come with an instruction manual, she said, her voice gaining strength. My mom worked 2 jobs to support us, and I learned early that you can either complain about the hand you're dealt or play it the best way you can. Ethan listened in silence. I don't have the most impressive background or the most relevant experience, she continued, but I have something that might be more rare. Authenticity. I don't pretend to be someone I'm not. I'm not good at office politics or fake smiles. I just work hard and hope that's enough. Ethan watched her for a long moment, and when people question your ability, I prove them wrong, Alex said without hesitation, like I did today. Ethan smiled for the first time since the conversation started. That's exactly what you did. Alex felt a wave of relief. So, I can keep my job? Alex, Ethan said as he stood up, you're staying. Don't worry. As she left the office, Alex couldn't stop smiling. Maybe, just maybe, she really did belong there. After she walked out, Ethan stood at the window, watching her organize her desk through the glass. There was something about her honesty that completely disarmed him. It had been years since anyone had spoken to him so directly without any hidden agenda. Alex knocked on the door and came in with a few documents. Contracts from Thompson Industries for your review, she said. Placing the folder on his desk, Ethan turned from the window. Alex, can I ask you something else? She looked at him curiously. Sure, as long as it's not about advanced math. My brain's still recovering from today's presentation. Ethan almost smiled. How do you manage to keep your sense of humor in every situation? Alex sat down in the chair, across from his desk. Do you want the honest answer or the version fit for a holiday card? The honest one, because the other option is crying, and crying ruins mascara, and good mascara is expensive. Ethan laughed, a genuine laugh that caught him off guard. And besides, Alex continued, I've learned that when you laugh at tough situations, they lose a bit of their power over you. It's like taking the batteries out of a spoiled kid's remote. Ethan leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. You have a very unique way of seeing life. That's what happens when you learn early on that life doesn't follow a script. My mom used to say we can either be victims of our circumstances or the directors of our own chaos. She sounds like a wise woman. She was, Alex said softly. She passed away 3 years ago. Cancer. Ethan felt a familiar ache in his chest. I'm sorry. Thank you. And you? Big family. I imagine a successful CEO must have come from a business dynasty. Ethan hesitated. He rarely talked about his personal life, but there was something about Alex that made him want to open up. Not really. My mom died when I was 15. Cancer, too. Alex looked at him with genuine compassion. Wow. I'm sorry. That must have been really hard. It was my father. He shut down after that. Work became his way of dealing with the pain, and eventually it became mine, too. And now? Is he still around? Ethan shook his head. He passed away 5 years ago. Heart attack. He was in the office until his last hour. Alex was quiet for a moment. So, in a way, you kind of inherited the loneliness along with the company. The observation caught him off guard with how accurate it was. That's one way to put it. And the board? I bet they love having someone so young running everything. Ethan gave a bitter laugh. Love is a strong word. They tolerate it, as long as the profits keep coming. But there's always pressure. Every decision is questioned. Every hire. Alex tilted her head. Every hire like me? Especially you. Because I don't fit into their perfect corporate world. Because you're real, Ethan said, surprising himself with the honesty, and that scares them. Alex smiled. Well, for what it's worth, I scare myself sometimes, too. Yesterday, I tried to make coffee and somehow broke the machine. Still don't know how. Ethan laughed again, feeling lighter than he had in months. How do you do that? What? Break appliances? It's a gift. No. How do you make me laugh when I should be stressed about 1,000 other things? Alex looked at him for a moment. Maybe because you need to laugh more. Life's complicated enough without taking everything so seriously all the time. Ethan watched her, feeling something shift inside him. He hadn't felt this human in years. The next day, Alex was returning from lunch when she saw something that made her stop in the hallway. Victoria was slipping out of the boardroom carrying a thick brown folder. She looked around as if she'd just done something she wasn't supposed to. Alex ducked behind a pillar, watching as Victoria quickly made her way toward the elevator. There was something about her posture that screamed, "Secret mission. Interesting." Alex muttered, "What was the Ice Queen doing in the boardroom with that folder?" She tried not to dwell on it and went back to work. But the strange feeling stayed with her all afternoon. 3 days later, Ethan appeared at her desk, his expression serious. So serious it made Alex's stomach drop. "Alex, I need to speak with you," he said. His tone was formal again. "Now." Alex followed him into his office, trying to read his face. Ethan closed the door and motioned for her to sit down. "I've received some concerning information about you," he said, sitting behind his desk. Alex's heart started racing. "What kind of information?" Ethan opened a folder on his desk. "The board received a detailed report questioning your competence and your intentions here at the company." Alex felt a chill rush through her. "My intentions?" "According to this report, you've shown serious inexperience, made deliberate mistakes to get attention, and," Ethan paused, "you've allegedly used emotional manipulation to influence my decisions." Alex stood up, outraged. "What? That's completely ridiculous. Who wrote this fiction?" "The report is anonymous," Ethan said, watching her reaction. "Of course it is," Alex scoffed, "because people who spread lies usually don't have the courage to sign their name." Ethan closed the folder. "Alex, I need you to be completely honest with me. Is there any truth to any of these accusations?" Alex looked him straight in the eye. "You know me, Ethan." "At least a little," Alex said, her voice steady but wounded. "I'm a lot of things. Clumsy, sometimes impulsive, definitely not the most conventional employee you've ever had, but manipulative, a liar, a saboteur." She shook her head, hurt in her eyes. "If you believe I'm capable of that, then maybe you don't know me as well as I thought." Ethan watched her for a long moment, then stood up. "I know you're none of those things," he said firmly. "How can you be so sure?" "Because manipulators don't own up to their mistakes. They don't show up to interviews barefoot, and they definitely don't joke about dying in an elevator." Alex felt a wave of relief. "So, you don't believe the report?" "Not a single word," Ethan replied, "but I need to find out who's behind it." "I have a guess," Alex said, recalling the moment she had witnessed earlier. "Victoria. I saw her coming out of the boardroom a few days ago with a very suspicious-looking folder. She looked like she'd just been caught doing something shady." Ethan nodded. "I'll talk to her." An hour later, Ethan called Victoria into his office. She walked in wearing her usual professional smile, but Ethan noticed the tension in her shoulders. "Have a seat, Victoria," he said, motioning to the chair. "Of course. Ethan, how can I help you?" Ethan placed the dossier on the desk between them. "Do you recognize this?" Victoria's face paled slightly, but she kept her composure. "Looks like a board report," she said with feigned indifference. "It's an anonymous report filled with serious accusations against Alex. Interestingly, the language used mirrors things I've heard you say more than once." Victoria lifted her chin. "If my professional observations happen to align with the board's concerns, maybe you should consider they're valid." Ethan leaned back in his chair. "Victoria, you've worked here for 8 years. You've always been competent. But this," he tapped the dossier, "this is petty and baseless." "I'm just protecting the company's interests," Victoria replied, but her voice was losing its strength. "No, you're sabotaging a colleague out of personal jealousy," Ethan said, his voice firm. "And that ends now." Victoria stood abruptly. "You'll regret protecting her, Ethan. She's not who you think she is. And you're not who I thought you were," Ethan shot back. "Now, I suggest you refocus your energy on your own responsibilities." Victoria stormed out of the office, her steps stiff with frustration. Ethan knew her pride wouldn't let this go easily. This wasn't over, but it was a start. The following Monday, Ethan approached Alex's desk with a determined look. "I need you to come with me on a business trip," he said without preamble. Alex looked up from the documents she was organizing. "A trip? Where to?" "New York. We've got a crucial meeting with Hamilton and Associates on Thursday. The deal's practically gone, and I need every bit of help to save it." Alex blinked a few times, trying to process, "You want me?" Someone who once broke a coffee machine to help save a major contract? Exactly, Ethan said. Your presentation last week proved that you have a unique perspective. Sometimes that's what makes the difference. Alex felt a mix of pride and sheer terror. Okay, when do we leave? Wednesday morning. Fly to Ota A.M., Alex asked as if he'd just suggested flying to Mars. In the morning, Ethan confirmed, trying not to smile. On Wednesday, Alex arrived at the Seattle airport 2 hours early, determined not to mess anything up. She had triple-checked everything. Ticket, documents, luggage. What she didn't expect was how her anxiety would turn her into an even more exaggerated version of herself. First, she mistook the Delta check-in counter for United's and insisted for 5 full minutes that her flight was in their system until the attendant patiently pointed out she was in the wrong airline. Sorry, she muttered to Ethan, who had watched the whole thing unfold. Apparently, when I'm nervous, I develop a very selective kind of dyslexia. Next, in the security line, she set off the metal detector 3 times in a row. Ma'am, I need you to remove your shoes, said the TSA agent. I already did, Alex replied, confused. And your belt? Took that off too. And your jacket? Alex looked down and realized she was still wearing her blazer with metal buttons. Oh, right. That would do it, she mumbled, slipping it off, while Ethan stood on the other side, shaking his head with an amused look on his face. The peak of Alex's misadventures came at the airport gate. She grabbed a black suitcase identical to hers, only to discover, once already on the plane, that it belonged to a businessman who now had her collection of uncomfortable shoes, and she had his size 42 suits. Well, at least now I've got the right clothes for the meeting, Alex whispered to Ethan while the flight attendant tried to sort things out. Assuming you don't mind me looking like a kid playing dress-up in her dad's closet, Ethan chuckled quietly. How do you manage to turn every simple situation into a comedy of errors? It's a gift, Alex said with a shrug. My mom used to say that if chaos were a talent, I'd be a virtuoso. In New York, after finally resolving the suitcase situation, which involved a quick sprint to the nearest mall for Alex to buy something work-appropriate, they headed to the offices of Hamilton and Associates. Alex was visibly nervous in the elevator. What if I mess everything up, she asked, adjusting her new suit for the 5th time. You won't, Ethan said confidently. How can you be so sure? Because you don't pretend to be someone you're not, and that's exactly what we need to win these clients back. The Hamilton and Associates boardroom was intimidating, floor-to-ceiling glass, a panoramic view of Manhattan, and 3 stern executives who looked like they'd rehearsed their distrustful expressions in front of a mirror. Mr. Hayes, greeted James Hamilton, the senior partner. We hope you have a very compelling proposal. Frankly, after last quarter's issues, we're considering other options. Ethan gave his presentation, technical, structured, but Alex could tell it wasn't landing. The expressions remained stiff, and she noticed Ethan getting more tense with each slide. Then James turned to her. And you are? Alex Harper, Mr. Hayes' assistant, she replied, standing up. Do you have anything to add? Alex glanced at Ethan, who gave her an encouraging nod. She took a deep breath and decided to be herself. Actually, I do, she said, stepping to the front of the room. Can I ask you something? Why do you really want to cancel the contract with us? James looked surprised by her directness. Well, there have been delays, communication issues, right? Alex gently interrupted. So, it's not about money or product quality. It's about trust. She gestured to the sweeping city view. You built this firm on relationships, didn't you? I'm guessing every major client started with an honest conversation, not a PowerPoint deck. The executives glanced at each other. Go on, said Margaret, the second partner. Alex smiled. We've made mistakes. I won't pretend we haven't. But here's the thing. We've learned from them. And now we don't just want to fix what went wrong. We want to build something stronger. She pointed toward Ethan. This man hasn't slept well in weeks trying to figure out how to fix what we messed up. Not because he has to, but because he truly cares about your success. Alex picked up a marker and walked over to the whiteboard. Let me show you exactly how we can rebuild this relationship step by step. Over the next 20 minutes, she outlined a recovery plan that combined practical solutions with just the right touch of humanity. Something Ethan had never seen in a corporate presentation. When she finished, the room fell silent. James leaned forward. That was the most honest presentation we've ever seen, he said slowly. And the most effective, added Margaret, smiling for the first time. 2 hours later, they walked out of the building with the contract not only renewed, but expanded. Alex, Ethan said the moment they stepped into the taxi. What you just did was extraordinary. I was just being honest, she replied, still trying to process what had happened. It was much more than that. You saved a years-long business relationship. Alex smiled. Well, technically we saved it. I just brought the organized chaos. You brought the competence. Ethan looked at her with a depth that made her heart race. You really underestimate yourself. Back at the hotel, they discovered one final surprise. A mix-up in the reservation had put them in the same room. Apparently, the system registered a double room for Mr. and Mrs. Hayes. The receptionist said, clearly embarrassed. Alex and Ethan looked at each other. We can fix this easily, Ethan started. Actually, the receptionist added, we're fully booked because of a convention. There are no other rooms available tonight. Alex sighed. Of course, because my day clearly needed a little more comedy. Ethan turned to her. I can find another hotel. Don't be ridiculous. Alex cut in. We're adults. We can share a room for one night without turning it into a Hollywood drama. The tension in the room was thick. 2 beds. But the space felt smaller than it should have. I'm going to take a shower, Ethan said, grabbing his things. While he was in the bathroom, Alex sat on the bed trying to process the day. The presentation, Ethan's praise, and now this. When Ethan came out wearing only pajama pants and a t-shirt, Alex felt her breath catch for a moment. Want to order room service? He asked, seemingly unaware of the effect he was having. Sure, she said, hoping her voice sounded normal. Over dinner, they talked about work, the city. A little bit of everything and nothing. The silences weren't awkward, but there was a spark in the air that neither of them addressed. Alex, Ethan said suddenly, more serious. Yeah? Thank you for today. For everything. They were sitting on the room sofa, closer than they probably should have been. Ethan reached out and gently touched her face. Ethan, Alex whispered. He leaned in, and for a moment, time stopped. Their lips were just inches apart when Alex suddenly pulled away. We can't, she said, standing up quickly. I work for you. This would just make everything messy. Ethan looked at her, breathing uneven. You're right, he said finally. Sorry. You don't have to be sorry, Alex said, though her voice shook. It's just complicated. But even as she said it, they both knew something between them had changed for good. Whatever that was, it couldn't be ignored anymore. Back at the office on Friday, Alex was doing her best to pretend nothing had happened in New York. The problem was, every time Ethan walked past her desk, she felt a flush rise up her neck, and every time he spoke to her, his voice had a rough edge, like he'd swallowed sand. Good morning, Alex, Ethan said, stopping at her desk with a few documents. Good morning, Mr. Hayes, she replied. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Mr. Hayes? Since when are we using formal titles again? Alex pretended to be deeply focused on organizing staplers that were already perfectly lined up. Well, we're at work. Got to be professional, right? Ethan looked at her for a moment. A barely tugging, their smile tugging at his lips. Right, professionalism. He walked away, but Alex could feel the shift in the air. It was like there was an invisible current connecting them, and every tiny move only made the tension stronger. Throughout the morning, Alex noticed she wasn't the only one who felt it. People around the office were paying closer attention to how she and Ethan interacted, especially Victoria, who was watching like a hungry hawk. At lunchtime, Alex was in the elevator when Claire from marketing stepped in. So, how was New York? She asked with a curious smile. Productive, Alex answered, trying to sound casual. We managed to renew the Hamilton contract. I heard you nailed the presentation. It was a team effort. Claire murmured with that tone that says, I know there's more to it. Must have been a very close team effort. Alex felt her internal alarm go off. Like any professional presentation, she said, maybe a little too fast. Claire's smile widened. Of course, professional. When the elevator doors opened, Alex almost ran out. But she could feel Claire's eyes on her back the whole way. By Monday, the rumors had spread like a virus on an old computer. Alex kept hearing pieces of conversations in the halls. Got real close in New York. She moved up way too fast. You think it's really just about her skills? Alex tried to ignore it, but it was like trying to ignore a fire alarm. No chance. Victoria, of course, took every opportunity to fan the flames. Well, she did rise through the ranks fast, Victoria said in the break room, loud enough for Alex to hear from the hallway. From barefoot in her interview to flying with the CEO in just a few weeks. Impressive. Maybe she's just really good at her job, said Nora from HR. Oh, I'm sure she's very good, Victoria replied, her tone full of suggestion. "The real question is, good at what exactly?" Alex wanted to walk into that break room and say a few things she'd regret, but she knew keeping her dignity was more important than getting the last word. On Tuesday, during the weekly department meeting, things came to a head. Victoria made a point of publicly questioning Ethan's decision to take Alex to New York. "Ethan, wouldn't it have made more sense to take someone with more experience to such an important meeting?" Victoria asked, flashing her trademark fake smile. The room went silent. Alex felt every head turn in her direction. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his face taking on that cold, unreadable expression Alex had seen on her very first day. "Victoria," he said, his voice calm but sharp as glass, "may I ask, what exactly is your concern?" "Well," Victoria began, her tone drenched in false politeness, "some people might question the criteria used for selecting employees for important corporate travel." Alex felt her face flush hot. It was like being on trial for crimes she hadn't committed. Ethan rose slowly from his chair. "Let me make something very clear to everyone in this room," he said, his voice slicing through the air. "Alex Harper earned her place at this company through talent, dedication, and competence. Her presentation in New York was exceptional and directly led to the renewal of a contract we had all but lost." Alex's eyes widened. Ethan was defending her publicly. "Anyone who questions her qualifications," he continued, locking eyes with Victoria, "should first take a hard look at their own results. Alex saved a multi-million-dollar business relationship. How many of you can say the same?" The room fell into heavy silence. Victoria, clearly flustered, had turned a visible shade of red, but Ethan wasn't finished. "If anyone has concerns about my management decisions, you're more than welcome to address them with me directly. Now, can we get back to the matters that actually matter?" The meeting went on, but Alex barely heard a word. Ethan's fierce defense had been so absolute, there was no room left for doubt, at least not in the boardroom. The real problem was his passionate defense only added fuel to the rumors already circulating. After the meeting, Alex rushed to the restroom, needing a moment to breathe. She was washing her hands when the door opened, and Ethan walked in. "Ethan, this is the women's restroom," she said, startled. "I need to talk to you," he replied, ignoring protocol, "about the meeting. Look, I appreciate you standing up for me, but you do realize that now everyone is convinced there's something going on between us, right?" Ethan stepped closer. "And what if there is?" Alex's heart jumped. "Ethan, Alex, I can't stop thinking about you," he said, his voice low, intense. "In New York, in that room, I wanted to kiss you more than I wanted to breathe." Alex swallowed hard. "We can't have this conversation here." "Then where can we have it?" "Nowhere," she replied, but even to her own ears, her voice lacked conviction. Ethan took a step closer. "You feel it too. I know you do." Alex looked into his eyes and saw something that terrified her. Vulnerability. Ethan Hayes, the cold, calculated CEO, was laying himself bare. "Of course, I feel it," she whispered. "But that doesn't change the fact that this is complicated, dangerous." "Why?" "Because you're my boss. Because half the company already thinks I'm sleeping my way up. Because if this blows up, it's not just a breakup, it's my whole career on the line." Ethan gently touched her arm. "Alex, you make me want to be different, more human. I haven't felt that in years." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just attraction. This was something deeper and scarier. "Ethan, she began, but was interrupted when the restroom door opened. Nora from HR walked in and froze. "Oh, sorry. I'll come back." Ethan sighed. "No, it's fine. We were just wrapping up a work discussion." He gave Alex one last look. "Think about what I said." After he left, Nora walked toward her. "Are you okay?" Alex looked at her reflection in the mirror. She looked like someone who just realized she was standing in the middle of a storm. "Honestly, I don't know anymore." But even as she said the words, she knew Ethan was right. She felt something for him, something strong, something overwhelming, and worst of all, something she couldn't joke away. Some things were just too serious even for her. The following Thursday, Ethan showed up at Alex's desk with an expression she couldn't read. "Alex, I need to talk to you about the company's annual party," he said, leaning slightly against her desk. "The party?" Alex repeated as if he'd just brought up some kind of ancient ceremonial rite. "It's this Saturday. Formal event at the Four Seasons. All employees are invited, but," he hesitated, "I'd like you to attend as my date." Alex nearly dropped her coffee cup. "Your date? As in date? Ethan gave a faint smile, as in you'd be by my side officially. Panic rose in Alex's throat. Ethan, you do realize that this will confirm every rumor people already have about us, right? Maybe, he said, lowering his voice. It's time we stopped hiding. Alex looked at him for a long moment. Part of her wanted to say yes right away. The other part was calculating just how many ways this could all go horribly wrong. What if I say something inappropriate? What if I trip? What if I don't know, spill a drink on some important client? Alex, Ethan said gently, just be yourself. That's all you need to do. She took a deep breath. All right, but if I end up dancing awkwardly and become the company's next viral meme, you've been warned. Ethan chuckled. I'll take the risk. On Saturday night, Alex spent 2 hours deciding what to wear. She had exactly one dress that could be considered even remotely appropriate for a formal event. A simple black one she'd bought the previous year for her aunt's funeral. Perfect, she muttered at the mirror. Nothing says fancy party like a morning dress, but when she looked at herself again, she had to admit it wasn't so bad. The dress flattered her figure, and she'd managed to tame her hair into something that almost resembled a fancy updo. Ethan picked her up at 7, and when Alex opened the door, the expression on his face made her blush. You look, he began, then shook his head. Beautiful. Thank you, she said, grabbing her small purse. You don't look too bad yourself. That tux almost makes you look civilized. Ethan laughed. Almost? Well, you still have that calculating profit margins while brushing your teeth expression. The Four Seasons ballroom was flawless. Soft lighting, elegant decor, and V&L employees Alex barely recognized in formal wear. Wow, she whispered to Ethan. Everyone looks like they stepped out of a fashion magazine. I feel like a fraud. You belong here just as much as anyone, Ethan replied, placing a hand gently on her back as he guided her inside. Alex immediately noticed the stares. Some were curious, some surprised, others unmistakably disapproving. Victoria, wearing a bold red dress that screamed, "Look at me," was glaring in their direction like she could set Alex on fire with her eyes. I think your presence hasn't gone unnoticed, Ethan murmured beside her. I feel like an animal at the zoo, Alex muttered back. Except instead of peanuts, they're throwing rumors. During dinner, Alex did her best to make polite conversation with the other directors and their spouses. It was going relatively well until she stood to greet the wife of the CFO, and the heel of her shoes snapped with an audible crack. Oh no, Alex groaned, grabbing the back of her chair for balance. This is officially a pattern. The entire table turned to look. Alex wished she could disappear under the tablecloth. Sorry, she said, trying to hold on to her dignity while noticeably tilting to one side. Apparently, my shoes have a mind of their own and choose to self-destruct at critical moments. Instead of the awkward silence she expected, the table burst into laughter, genuine laughter. That happened to me at my wedding, said Margaret, the marketing director's wife, right in the middle of the vows. At least it didn't happen during your pitch, added Owen, chuckling. Imagine explaining that to the board. Alex smiled, realizing her little disaster had ironically broken the stiff formality at the table. Ethan leaned toward her. Want me to fetch a Band-Aid from life's emergency kit? Very funny, Alex replied. But she was smiling too. After dinner, as the music started, Alex watched the elegantly dressed couples glide across the dance floor like swans on a lake. I don't know how to dance, she told Ethan when he approached. Neither do I. He lied shamelessly. Ethan, you grew up in a wealthy family. I'm sure you had ballroom dancing lessons. Maybe, he admitted, but I've never danced with someone barefoot. Alex glanced down and laughed. She'd kicked off her shoes after the incident. Well, at least we know I won't be breaking another heel tonight. Ethan extended his hand. Shall we try? On the dance floor, Alex tried to follow Ethan's lead, but it was like teaching quantum physics to a hamster. She stepped on his feet, turned the wrong way, and at one point even got tangled in her own skirt. Sorry, she laughed as Ethan untangled her. I warned you. I'm a disaster. You're being delightful, Ethan said, pulling her a little closer. Is that a polite way of saying I dance like a drunk penguin? You dance like someone who's not afraid to laugh at herself. Around them, Alex could see other couples smiling as they watched her and Ethan awkwardly sway. But there was no judgment, only something surprisingly warm, something kind. I think we've become tonight's entertainment, she whispered. I don't mind, he said, eyes fixed on hers. Something shifted between them. The music continued, but it sounded further away now. The crowded room seemed to fade until it felt like only the two of them remained. Just Alex. Just Ethan. And the space between them slowly disappearing. Ethan stopped trying to teach her the steps and simply held her gently, swaying to the rhythm of the music. "Alex," he said softly. "Who?" "Thank you." "For what?" "For reminding me that life can be fun." Alex felt her heart skip a beat. There was something in the way Ethan looked at her, like she was the most precious thing in the world. At the end of the night, Ethan walked her to her car. The parking lot was nearly empty, lit only by the soft lights of the hotel. "Well, that was an interesting evening," Alex said, nervously playing with her purse strap. "It was perfect," Ethan replied. They stood beside her car, neither of them seeming to want the night to end. "Alex," Ethan said, stepping closer. "Ethan, don't say anything," he whispered, raising his hand to gently touch her face. "Just don't say anything for a moment." And then finally, he kissed her. It wasn't hesitant or unsure like it almost had been in New York. It was certain, intense, and made Alex forget completely where they were. When they pulled apart, Alex was breathless. "Wow," was all she managed. Ethan smiled. "Wow is a good response." Alex looked at him, processing what had just happened. "Ethan, this changes everything." "I know," he said, still holding her face. "Do you still care?" Alex thought of all the complications, all the risks, all the reasons why this was a terrible idea. Then she leaned in and kissed him again. "Apparently not," she murmured against his lips, because sometimes the heart speaks louder than logic, and Alex's heart was screaming that Ethan Hayes was worth every complication. In the weeks that followed that kiss in the parking lot, Alex and Ethan developed a sort of carefully choreographed dance of discretion. At the office, they were strictly professional, but there were small gestures only the two of them understood, a lingering glance during meetings, fingers brushing as they passed documents, secret smiles when no one was looking. "I need you to organize my schedule for next week," Ethan said one morning, standing beside Alex's desk. "Of course," she replied professionally. "Any time preferences?" "Keep Thursday and Friday afternoons open," he said quietly. "I've got important plans." Alex looked up and saw the almost imperceptible smile on his lips. His important plans usually involved quiet dinners at restaurants far from the city center. "Understood, Mr. Hayes," she replied, having to bite her lip not to smile. Their early outings were adventures on their own. Ethan, used to restaurants that required reservations weeks in advance, found himself being dragged by Alex to what she called hidden gems. "This place looks cozy," Ethan said diplomatically, eyeing the small Italian restaurant in a Capitol Hill neighborhood. "You mean it looks cheap?" Alex translated, laughing. "Ethan, not every place needs a maid and linen tablecloth to serve good food." "I wasn't criticizing." He defended himself. "Just never eaten somewhere with the menu written by hand on a chalkboard." "Welcome to the real world," Alex said, grabbing a table near the window. "Here, the Italian grandma in the kitchen knows your name, not your bank balance." Ethan watched as Alex greeted the waiter in basic Italian and asked for recommendations like a regular. There was an ease about her, a way of adapting and finding joy in simple things that he hadn't experienced in a long time. "How did you find this place?" he asked, tasting the lasagna, which he had to admit was delicious. "My neighbor, Mrs. Rossi," she said. "If I didn't try her granddaughter's cooking, I'd be missing the point of life." And considering Mrs. Rossi survived the Great Depression, 2 wars, and 4 husbands, I figured she knew what she was talking about. Ethan laughed. "4 husbands?" "She says the first 3 were practice for the last one, who was perfect. They were married for 40 years until he passed in his sleep at 85. And what does she do now?" "Tends her garden, feeds stray cats, and gives me unsolicited dating advice," Alex said, twirling spaghetti on her fork. "Last week, she told me it was time I hooked a big fish instead of playing with sardines." Ethan nearly choked on his wine. "She said that?" "Mrs. Rossi isn't exactly known for subtlety." Alex laughed. "But I think she'd approve of you. You're definitely not a sardine." During these nights, Ethan discovered sides of Alex that the office didn't reveal. She talked about her childhood, how she learned to cook by helping her mom, about her half-forgotten dreams of traveling the world. "I've always wanted to see the Northern Lights," Alex said one evening as they walked along the waterfront after dinner. "It seems like something so magical. It's hard to believe it's real. Why haven't you gone?" Ethan asked. Alex shrugged. "Money, priorities, life. You know how it goes." Ethan stopped walking. "Actually, I don't. I've always been able to go wherever I wanted. Must be nice." Alex said without bitterness. But maybe that's why I value the small adventures more. Like this one, she gestured to the two of them walking by the water. 6 months ago, if someone told me I'd be secretly dating my boss, I would have suggested therapy. Dating? Ethan repeated with a smile. Alex blushed. I don't know what the official term is for this. Ethan stopped and pulled her gently closer. I like dating. Alex also discovered that Ethan carried a weight she hadn't imagined. During a particularly rough night when a major business deal had gone south, she saw a vulnerable side of him. Sometimes I feel like I'm carrying everyone's expectations, he confessed, sitting on the couch in Alex's small but cozy apartment. Shareholders, employees, my father's legacy. It's like spinning plates on sticks. And what happens when you drop a plate? Alex asked, handing him a mug of tea from her mismatched collection. Everyone sees it. Everyone judges. Alex sat beside him. Have you ever thought that maybe people expect you to be perfect because you always act like you are? Ethan looked at her, confused. What do you mean? You never let anyone see that you're human. When was the last time you laughed at your own mistake in front of your employees or admitted you didn't know something? Ethan thought for a moment. I don't remember. Then maybe that's why they expect perfection. You've never shown them that it's okay to mess up. And what if they lose respect for me? Alex smiled gently. Ethan, your team doesn't respect you because they think you're perfect. They respect you because you're competent and fair. A little humanity would only make you more relatable. How do you make it sound so simple? Because I grew up learning that pretending to be perfect is exhausting, Alex said, tucking her legs under her. It's easier to be authentically imperfect. But while Alex and Ethan were quietly building their secret relationship, someone was watching closely. Victoria had noticed the subtle changes. Ethan smiling more. Alex arriving at work with a dreamy look. The two of them avoiding leaving the office together at obvious times. She started paying attention to the details. Noticed how Ethan always seemed to have a reason to stop by Alex's desk, how Alex returned from lunch glowing in a way that had nothing to do with food, how both of them were careful to never share elevators when others were present. One afternoon, Victoria decided to act. She discreetly followed Alex during her lunch break and spotted her meeting Ethan 3 blocks away from the office. From a distance, she watched them walk together, too close to be casual, too familiar to be professional. Victoria smiled. She finally had what she needed. Over the next 2 weeks, she documented everything. Discreet photos of the two entering and leaving restaurants, arriving at the office early together, which Victoria interpreted as proof they'd spent the night together, casual moments of closeness that alone meant little, but taken together, painted a clear picture. On a typical Monday morning, Alex arrived at the office humming softly. She had spent all of Sunday with Ethan, first at a farmer's market where he bought ingredients to cook for her, a hilariously failed attempt that ended in pizza delivery, and later watching old movies on her couch. She was organizing her desk when she noticed the brown envelope. There was no sender, just her name typed in capital letters. Alex opened it curiously. Inside was a collection of photographs. She and Ethan leaving a restaurant, walking hand in hand, Ethan kissing her forehead outside her building. At the bottom of the envelope, a simple note. I know your little secret. Alex felt the blood drain from her face. The photos slipped from her trembling hands, spreading across her desk like evidence of a crime. She quickly looked around, but the office was running as usual. People were working, chatting, living their normal lives. No one seemed to be paying any special attention to her, but someone had spent weeks watching, documenting, planning. Alex quickly gathered the photos and the note, stuffing them into her bag with a racing heart. Her life had just gotten a whole lot more complicated. Alex spent the rest of Monday in a state of controlled panic, trying to act normal while her hands trembled every time she touched a document. The photos were burning a hole in her purse, but she couldn't decide whether to tell Ethan immediately or try to find out who was behind the blackmail first. The decision was made for her on Tuesday morning. She arrived at the office to find small groups of people whispering. Conversations that stopped abruptly when she walked by. The looks weren't just curious this time. They were judgmental. Good morning, Alex, said Claire from marketing, but her tone was different, cold. Alex forced a smile. Good morning, Claire. How was your weekend? The question was loaded with implication. Quiet, Alex answered, her stomach tightening. When she got to her desk, she found Ryan from finance waiting for her, looking uncomfortable. Alex, can I talk to you for a minute? Of course, she said, though she knew she didn't want to hear whatever was coming. Ryan stepped closer, lowering his voice. Some photos are going around. You and Ethan? I thought you should know. Alex felt the world collapse around her. What kind of photos? You know what kind, Ryan said gently. Look, I don't care about your personal life. But people are talking. Alex sat heavily in her chair. How? How far has it spread? Pretty much everyone's seen them. I'm sorry. Alex. For the rest of the morning, Alex tried to work, but it was impossible to ignore the whispers, the sideways glances, the conversations that abruptly ended whenever she approached. It was like she was wearing an outfit with a huge stain everyone could see, except her. Ethan hadn't arrived yet. He was out at an external meeting, and Alex wasn't sure if she was relieved or even more anxious because of it. At 10:30, Lisa from HR came to her desk. Alex, I need to speak with you now. Alex followed Lisa to a small conference room where two board members were already seated. Henry Grant, the chairman, and Laura Brooks, the vice president. Please sit, Henry said, his expression serious. Alex sat down, feeling like a student sent to the principal's office. Alex, Henry began, it's come to our attention that you are involved in an inappropriate relationship with Mr. Hayes. Alex swallowed hard. Mr. Grant, I can explain. The photographs speak for themselves. Laura interrupted. This type of behavior is unacceptable in our company. With all due respect, Alex said, finding her voice. My personal life stops being personal when it involves the CEO of the company. Henry cut in. It creates conflicts of interest, concerns about favoritism, potential legal issues. Alex felt tears of frustration burn behind her eyes. I never asked for special treatment. I've never used my relationship with Ethan to... Mr. Hayes. Laura corrected coldly. Mr. Hayes, Alex repeated, to gain any professional advantage. Your intention don't matter, Henry said. Perception is just as important as reality. The door opened, and Ethan walked in, his expression changing instantly when he saw the scene. What's going on here? Ethan. Henry stood. We need to speak with you about the photographs. Alex watched Ethan tense. His eyes quickly found hers before turning to the board. What photographs? Laura slid one of the photos across the table. It was one of the most intimate. Ethan kissing Alex's forehead in front of her building. Ethan looked at the photo, then at Alex, who was clearly distressed. Where did you get this? That matters less than the fact that it exists, Henry said. Ethan, this is a serious breach of corporate protocol. My personal life is not company business, Ethan replied, his voice dangerously calm. It is when it affects your ability to lead impartially, Laura shot back. Employees are questioning every decision you've made involving Miss Harper. Alex suddenly stood up. Stop, she said, her voice louder than she intended. Stop talking about me like I'm not in the room. Everyone turned to her. You want the truth? Alex continued, her voice shaking with anger. Yes, Ethan and I are in a relationship, and yes, it started after he hired me. But I earned my position here on my own merit. I saved the Hamilton contract with my skills, not because of personal favors. Alex, you don't have to, Ethan began. Yes, I do, she interrupted, because apparently my professional reputation is worth less than hallway gossip. She turned to face the board. You want my resignation? You can have it. But I won't accept that my work is being questioned, just because of who I happen to fall in love with. The silence in the room was deafening. Ethan slowly stood. If someone's leaving, Ethan said, it's going to be me. Ethan. No. Alex began. She's right, Ethan said, locking eyes with Henry. Alex earned her place here. She's more than just my employee. She's someone I admire and respect professionally and personally. And if you can't see her competence beyond our personal relationship, then that's not her problem. Laura looked shocked. Ethan, you're risking your position for an extraordinary woman, Ethan finished firmly. And if that's a problem for the board, then maybe I'm not the CEO you need. Henry stood. Ethan, you're being emotional. We need a rational decision here. This is my rational decision, Ethan replied. Alex stays, or we both go. After the 10th meeting, Ethan and Alex left the room together, but the mood between them was heavy. You shouldn't have done that, Alex said once they reached the elevator. Done what? Defended you? Risked your career for me? Ethan pressed the elevator button harder than necessary. My career means nothing if I can't protect the people who matter to me. But Alex was already shaking her head. This is exactly what they were talking about. You're making decisions based on emotion. So what if I am? Ethan turned to her. Maybe it's time we stop pretending personal and professional life can be completely separate. The elevator arrived, but Alex didn't get in. Ethan, I need time to think. Think about what? About all of this, what it means, what it could cost you. Ethan held the elevator door open. Alex, don't let them make you doubt what we have. It's not about what we have, she said, tears finally spilling over. It's about the price you're going to pay for it. Alex stepped away from the elevator, leaving Ethan watching her walk off with growing desperation in his eyes. That afternoon, after discreetly finding out that Victoria was behind the leaked photos, Ethan confronted her. The result: her immediate dismissal. But the damage had already been done. Alex packed up her things in silence, ignoring the curious glances from co-workers. When Ethan returned from his HR meeting about Victoria, he found only a note on his desk. I need time to think. Don't look for me. For a few days, Ethan sat heavily in his chair, staring out at the city. Now, feeling strangely empty without Alex nearby, she was gone. And for the first time, Ethan Hayes didn't know how to fix the most important problem in his life. 3 days passed with no word from Alex, 3 long days that felt like months. He'd called countless times, but she didn't answer. He'd gone to her apartment, but her neighbor, Mrs. Wantarty, Rossi, told him Alex had left to think and hadn't said when she'd be back. You're the big fish, Mrs., Rossi said, eyeing Ethan through the screen door, the one who caused all this drama. Ma'am, do you know where she went? Ethan asked, desperate. Oh, now you want to know? Mrs. Rossi huffed. Men, they make a mess and come running after the woman disappears. Please, Ethan said. I need to talk to her. Mrs. Rossi studied him for a long moment. She's where she always goes when she needs to clear her head. The community center in the neighborhood where she grew up. Helping with the kids. Ethan drove for 40 minutes until he reached Ballard, the neighborhood where Alex had grown up. The community center was a modest building, but well kept, with children's drawings taped to the windows. Inside, he followed the sound of laughter until he found a room where Alex was sitting on the floor, surrounded by a dozen kids between 6 and 10 years old. She was holding a storybook and doing a different voice for every character. And then, Alex said in a deep, dramatic voice, the dragon said, "Who dares enter my castle without knocking first? Don't you know that's very rude?" The kids giggled, and a little girl raised her hand. Miss Alex, do dragons knock when they visit people? Of course they do, Sophie. Alex answered seriously. Polite dragons always knock. The rude ones show up breathing fire without warning. Ethan stood silently in the doorway, watching. There was something different about Alex here. She looked lighter, more herself. Like she belonged. When the story ended, and the kids were sent off for snack time, Alex finally noticed Ethan standing there. Her smile faded. What are you doing here? She asked, getting up and brushing off her skirt. Mrs. Rossi told me where to find you. I'm going to have a very serious talk with that woman about confidentiality, Alex muttered. Ethan stepped closer. Alex, we need to talk. There's nothing to talk about, Alex said, starting to organize the books. You made your choice. He made mine. What choice? I didn't have a choice. Not when it comes to you. Alex stopped organizing and looked at him. Ethan, you risked your career, your company, everything you worked for, and I'd do it again, he said without hesitation. That's exactly the problem, Alex exclaimed, frustrated. You can't make irrational decisions because of me. Why not? The question caught her off guard. What do you mean? Why not? Ethan sat down on one of the small children's chairs, looking absurdly large. Alex, I've spent my whole life making rational decisions, calculated ones, based on numbers and projections. And do you know where that's gotten me? To an empty life, surrounded by people who only respect me because they're afraid of me. Alex sat in another tiny chair facing him. Ethan, you want to know the last time I really felt alive? Ethan continued. When I ran into you on the sidewalk, when you called me a stuck-up jerk, when you walked into that interview barefoot, despite everything, Alex smiled slightly. Well, you were being arrogant. I was, Ethan admitted, and you were the first person in years who had the guts to say so. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the children's laughter outside in the playground. How are things at the office? Alex finally asked. Victoria was fired. The board is divided. Half want me gone. The other half admit you really did save the Hamilton contract. And you, Ethan sighed. Honestly, for the first time, I don't care what the board thinks. Alex looked at him surprised. How can you not care? Because I've found something more important than corporate approval. What? Ethan stood up from the tiny chair and offered her his hand. Come with me. I want to show you something. They drove to Green Lake Park where they had walked a few times during their secret evenings out. Ethan led her to the edge of the lake, where ducks lazily floated in the calm water. "Remember the first time we came here?" Ethan asked. "You said you'd never fed ducks before," Alex recalled, "and almost got pecked trying to give one a piece of bread straight to its mouth. And you laughed so hard you nearly fell into the lake." "It was funny," Alex defended. "You, the big CEO, being intimidated by a duck." Ethan turned to her. "You know what else I remember from that night?" "What?" "It was the first time in years I laughed at myself. The first time I didn't care about looking ridiculous." Alex felt her heart speed up. "Ethan, where are you going with this?" Ethan took a deep breath and, to Alex's complete surprise, got down on one knee in the grass by the lake. "I'm going to the part where I realized I'd rather be ridiculous with you than sensible without you." Alex's eyes widened as Ethan pulled a small box from his pocket. "Ethan, what are you doing?" "Something completely irrational," he said, opening the box to reveal a simple yet elegant ring. "Alex Harper, will you marry me?" Alex was speechless. You've lost your mind. We're in the middle of a corporate scandal. Your job is on the line, and you're asking me to marry you." "Yes, that's not a rational answer." "It's not," Ethan agreed. "It's the first completely emotional decision I've made in 20 years. And you know what? I've never felt more certain about anything in my life." Alex looked at Ethan, kneeling in the grass, holding a ring with ducks floating behind him like aquatic witnesses. "People are going to say it's crazy, probably that it happened too fast. Maybe that you're having a midlife crisis. Possible," Ethan admitted with a smile. "But you know what? They won't be able to say." "What?" "That it's not love." Tears welled in Alex's eyes. "Ethan Hayes, you are officially the most stubborn and romantically impulsive person I've ever met. Is that a yes?" Alex looked at him, then at the ring, then at the lake where the ducks were still paddling, as if proposals were a daily event. "Yes," she said, laughing through her tears. "It's a yes, because apparently I've gone crazy too." Ethan slid the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss that made the ducks quack in approval. "You know," Alex said when they pulled apart, "Mrs. Rossi is going to be unbearably proud of herself when she hears about this. We're going to have to listen to her say, 'I told you so,' for the rest of our lives." Ethan laughed. "Worth it," Alex replied, admiring the ring. "Definitely worth it." As they walked back to the car, hand in hand, Alex couldn't stop smiling. Maybe all the mess, all the chaos, all the pain had been worth it if it brought them here. 6 months after the lakeside proposal, Alex stood at the entrance of a white tent set up on Alki Beach in Seattle, holding a bouquet of wildflowers and trying not to laugh at her own situation. "Ready?" asked Mia, her best friend, who had flown in from Portland to be her maid of honor. "Mia," Alex said, looking down at her bare feet, sinking into the sand, "I'm about to get married without shoes again. I think this has officially become my signature move." "At least this time it was intentional," Mia replied, smiling. "And look at that. You've made it all the way here without breaking anything yet." "The day is not over," Alex said with a grin. Mrs. Rossi, who had insisted on being the wedding's unofficial emotional consultant, appeared adjusting her floral hat. "Alex, darling, you look radiant. Didn't I say that big fish would be worth it?" "You did, Mrs. Rossi." "Repeatedly, daily." Alex laughed. "I'm sure you'll remind me of that for the next 50 years. "You bet I will," the older woman said proudly. On the other side of the tent, Ethan was adjusting his tie for the 10th time, clearly nervous. "Man, you've led presentations for multi-million-dollar shareholders," said Ryan, his best man. "This is just a wedding." "It's my wedding," Ethan corrected, "to the woman who turned my life into a non-stop romantic comedy." "And that's a bad thing?" Ethan smiled. "It's the best thing that's ever happened to me." Nora appeared at the entrance to the tent. "It's time, Ethan." Ethan took a deep breath and walked to the altar set up in the sand, where the officiant waited with a warm smile. The guests, an eclectic mix of co-workers, Alex's neighbors, and several kids from the community center, sat on white chairs arranged on the beach. The music began, and Ethan saw Alex appear at the entrance of the tent. She looked stunning in a simple yet elegant dress, her hair loose and catching the sea breeze, but what struck him most was the genuine smile on her face, pure joy without a trace of nerves. Alex began walking through the sand beside Mia, and Ethan noticed a few people chuckling softly when they saw she was barefoot. But they weren't mocking. These were smiles of affection from people who had grown to love Alex's quirks just as much as he did. When she reached him, Ethan whispered, "No broken heels this time. I've learned from my mistakes," Alex whispered back. "Besides, You're officially stuck with me now. No running when I cause a disaster. Wouldn't run even if I could." The officiant cleared his throat gently. "Shall we begin?" "More than ready," Alex replied. The ceremony was everything Alex had dreamed of. Intimate, joyful, and completely true to who she was. When it came time for the vows, Ethan went first. "Alex," he began, holding her hands, "when we met, you broke my heel. Well, technically it was your heel, but you get the point." Laughter rippled across the beach. "More importantly, you broke my routine, my expectations, my carefully built emotional walls. You brought chaos into my organized life, and I discovered that was exactly what I needed." He paused, visibly moved. "I promise to be your safe harbor when the world feels too serious. I promise to laugh with you, not at you. And I promise to never try to change your beautifully unique way of turning disasters into adventures. You are my balance, and I want to be yours." Alex was visibly emotional when it was her turn. "Ethan," she began, wiping away a tear, "when we met, you were the grumpiest man I'd ever seen. As serious as a funeral, as stiff as an ironing board." More laughter. "But underneath all that corporate armor, I found someone who just needed permission to be human. You taught me that structure isn't a prison, it's security. And I hope I taught you that a little chaos can be freeing." She smiled through tears. "I promise to never let our life become boring. I promise there will always be laughter in our home, even and especially when things go wrong. And I promise that no matter how many heels I break in the future, I will always come home barefoot, but happy. To you." When they exchanged rings and kissed, the applause on the beach was warm and genuine. The co-workers who once questioned Alex now applauded her sincerely. At the reception, held on a deck overlooking the sea, Alex moved through the guests feeling lighter than air. "Alex," said Henry Grant, the chairman of the board, approaching with his wife, "I want to apologize for the misunderstandings last year." "There's no need to apologize, Mr. Grant," Alex answered graciously. "You were protecting the company. I understand. Still," Henry continued, "I have to admit, Ethan has been more productive and, dare I say, more human since you two met. Last quarter's profits speak for themselves. Who would have thought that personal happiness improves professional performance?" Alex said with a wry smile. Henry chuckled. Mia walked over holding 2 glasses of champagne. "So, how are you feeling, Mrs. Hayes?" "Strange," Alex admitted, taking a glass. "Mrs. Hayes sounds like someone who knows how to use Excel and doesn't burn toast." "You'll get used to it," Mia laughed. "Remember when you used to say you'd never marry a businessman?" "I said boring businessman," Alex corrected her. "Ethan may be a lot of things, but boring definitely isn't one of them." Later, as the sun began to set over Puget Sound, Ethan and Alex found themselves alone at the edge of the deck. "So, Mrs. Hayes," Ethan said, wrapping his arm around her waist, "how are you feeling?" "Strange," Alex said again, "but a good kind of strange, like trying a new flavor and realizing it's your favorite." Ethan looked at her, noticing something different in her glow. "Alex, you're glowing today, more than usual." Alex took a deep breath, her smile growing wider. "Well, let's just say our honeymoon's going to be educational." "Educational? How?" "As in, you're going to learn how to change diapers. Kind of educational." Ethan stared at her for a moment. "Processing. You're—" "Yes," Alex laughed. "I found out last week. I was going to tell you during the honeymoon, but I just couldn't wait." Ethan lifted her off the ground and spun her around, both of them laughing. "Seriously?" he asked as he set her down again. "Seriously. In 8 months, you're going to be a dad." Ethan kissed her deeply, then rested his forehead against hers. "So, the chaos is only just beginning," he said, echoing words Alex had said so many months ago. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Alex asked. "A little version of me running around the house, probably inheriting my gift for breaking things." Ethan smiled, looking into the eyes of the woman who had turned his carefully structured life into a beautiful adventure. "Alex Hayes," he said, "bring on all the chaos you want. I'm ready for it." And as they danced barefoot on the deck, the sound of the waves in the background and the future shining brightly ahead, Alex knew she had found not just the love of her life, but the perfect partner in the beautiful, messy dance called life.